Okay, guys, we are live. Thank you, everyone, for coming into our AMA, our Ask Me Anything. We are honored to have our special guest, Giovanna, with us. So for tonight, we have Jessie, our community manager, who's put this together for us. She's going to be facilitating our questions. Yes, ASO clap, loving it. Um, so I'll turn it over to Jessie, and she'll introduce Giovanna and all of us, and we'll get started with some of the questions we've gotten so far. If I will point out, if you are watching on YouTube, you can comment on YouTube, and we will see it, and we'll be able to post your questions live on here and your comments. Okay. So feel free to ask us anything. Everything's on the table, guys. You can ask us silly questions, serious questions, and we'll dive into it. Okay. All right, Jessie, go ahead and start us off.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here. Super hype. We love being able to do this every month. Thank you to everyone who's joined. And we have the lovely Miss Giovanna here. I'm going to read her quick bio that is very impressive. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. So Miss Giovanna Carriero Contreras is a distinguished leader in the interpreting and translation industry with over 30 years of experience as a business solutions architect and operations management executive. She is a highly respected national and international speaker, accomplished translator and interpreter trainer, and published author in the language industry. As the founder and visionary of CESCO, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Linguist Services, Giovanna has demonstrated exceptional business acumen. Her dynamic leadership is evident through her roles as a founding member, past chair, and current chair-elect of the American Association of Interpreters and Translators in Education. Giovanna's contributions to advocacy and standards development have led to groundbreaking achievements, including co-authoring essential industry textbooks and helping to release the AAITE National Codes of Ethics for Translators and Interpreters in Education. She plays a pivotal role in shaping industry standards as a member of ASTM Committee F43 on Language Services and Products, and serves as chief of the U.S. delegations for the ISO TC 37 SC 5 for translation, interpreting, and related technology standards. She is co-chairs the ALC Language Access Committee and Advocacy Committees at ALC and ATA. Recently, she was appointed to the Language Access Advisory Board for the state of Colorado. In recognitions of her ethical leadership, Giovanna was honored at the 2020 Bill Daniels Ethical Leader of the Year. She remains dedicated to her work as an interpreter trainer and a passionate advocate for language access. And that is her bio. She is awesome. We're so excited to have her be involved in our discussion and everything. So woohoo, go Miss Giovanna. We're so grateful to have you here again. So you guys are going to see whenever I click a question, I'll just read it and then it'll pop up below and then we'll get started. Okay, so we have our first question, starting off strong, is what advice would you give to someone considering a career in interpreting?
So first of all, Jessie, thank you for giving me such a lovely introduction. And I've been thinking of a lot of things to say lately because of the upcoming conference that we're going to go coming, few weeks. Next week, the conference season opens up again. And I have very dear to my heart the mission of introducing, but also welcoming and enticing, attracting new blood into the profession. And where does that come from? Several venues. They can come from high school. They can come from colleges. They can come from different venues of life. People that want to have a career change, right? And so if people speak two or more languages, chances are at one point in their life, they will think of, oh, that's a job. I can do that job because I was doing it for my mom, for my cousin, for my grandma, right? So today, in the 21st century, what advice can I give you to someone that can consider a career in interpreting is to approach it with the same mentality that we would have as we approach the different profession. None of us would think of becoming a nurse without taking proper education as a nurse. Nobody would think that becoming a doctor happens overnight, or that defending the exam at the bar to be a lawyer happens in a month. So truly what I would like to form, to shape, is the mindset of approaching interpreting as a real profession, because the lives of people that we interpret for depend on us. And so that is the first advice that I would give. Look for community colleges, look for colleges, look for programs, look for robust trainings outside academia, because not everything exists in every single area that we live within. So you may be in an area where the community college has a program, awesome, or the college has a program. So research is also at the core of the skills that an interpreter should have. Now I can go on and on and on. So if anybody from the chat has any additional things that they would like me to develop it, you know where to put it, so the team can look at it. But this is really what I would say in the beginning. But I would also add, be humble, or find a way to really assess if we speak the languages at the level needed. You know, the fact that I can kind of communicate in a certain language and get by, it truly does not reflect the experiences and the situations that we may be exposed to. You know, if I interpret at a medical appointment, I need to be used to hear what a nurse says, what a doctor says. I cannot just make it up. I was just exposed to the laparoscopic appendectomy a few days ago, and sometimes I feel these are not two words that I would use in my regular day life. You know, I would talk about acute appendicitis, right? Very colloquial words. But yet these are the type of lingo that and then all the words they are with it. So do approach the profession by even considering, do I speak the languages at the level that is needed? And if not, don't get discouraged. You just need to learn what you need to work on to get there. What do you think, Sean?
I think you nailed it. I will say, being someone who as someone who has deaf parents and growing up around interpreting and being a professional interpreter, that's one that's often that goes unsaid. Is your L1 or your L2, your language 1 or language 2, is that actually to the point where it needs to be? I know a lot of people who have deaf parents and they can barely sign. They can barely use the language. And, you know, I thought that was something unique to sign language until I started really branching out and talking to people in other groups using different languages other than English. And you realize, oh, wow, this is very common. This is an issue, because really it's different levels of acculturalization that's happening, where immigrant communities come, they all speak the language, and then their children, their grandchildren, slowly that language use begins to die off because it's not spoken as much in the home. And I know many homes where they're told, okay, just speak English in the house because you want your kids to, you know, be comfortable with that language because that's where they're going to live and work in. And then when they get older, they always like, oh, I wish you spoke more Spanish with me, or I wish you spoke more this with me. So that they could be more of a bilingual person. So I do appreciate that nod to really assessing your language ability. But that's stuff you can develop, though.
Absolutely. And I have another thing to say as well. There is a huge difference between you speaking the language in a very eloquent way and you speaking into the language someone else's thoughts. In other words, the cognitive skills that I engage into when I manage my linguistic repertoire is controlled by my own brain. And so I manipulate, I play with the words the way I want. But if I have to now restructure in a way that reflects what someone else has said, that's a different cognitive skill set. And so we also go to the fact that there are people that do speak the language very well, but they do need the training to be able to pass that message from one language to the other, because at that point, our brain has to engage in that linguistic play to reflect what they said, not what I would have liked to say, or the way I would have said that what they said. And so when you think about it, when you go in court, and you need to interpret for the defense, when the defense talks to the jury, they always have their persuasive type of a way to talk, right? But if the doctor comes into the room and he has to tell you, or even the DA, and he has to say, this is the sentence that you are going to face for doing X, Y, Z, there is no persuasion there. So your cognitive skills now have to find a way to really adapt to whatever people say, no matter what language they speak. Isn't that fascinating?
I think that's a great point. I will say I know it might be a question we come up with, like, about pet peeves. That is a pet peeve of mine, because I work really hard on improving my register within my languages that I work in. So when I watch other interpreters do their work, and I know there's a level of nuance that person is using that's so deep, but the interpretation just does not rise up to that level of cultural weight and intention behind it, and it drives me nuts, because I'm like, oh, it's such a hard thing. One example that was presented to me recently is when deaf people use the term deaf school, and some interpreters interpret it as, oh yeah, so I went to a residential school, or I went to a deaf school, and they just interpret it that way. And it's like, but culturally, saying deaf school has way more weight to it. And you should be saying something to the effect of, yes, I went to a residential school where it was only sign language used, and I was away from my family who does not use sign language for extended periods of time. And it shows how that there is such a bridge, such a gap between the two cultures, even within their own families. There's so much more weight and nuance leveled in just how a deaf person may say something. So yeah, I would say really examining your language is advice I would focus on. I think sometimes people focus on linguistics too much, and it's more like, okay, now what do they mean? Let's focus on what they meant too. You're muted, Giovanna, I think.
Who did that? The example that you brought up is the difference between a dictionary and a glossary, right? Sometimes, we look at these equivalencies as, okay, you open that bilingual dictionary and this is the word in English and this is the word in another language. This is the word in English and this is the sign in a sign language, right? But the concepts may not equate, may not completely overlap. So you do need to use other words that supplement and complement the meaning. Yes, true. I was at the lunch yesterday, and with some teachers, older school teachers, and it was fascinating. And one of them came up with this quote: "Passing from third grade to higher grades is very difficult because you go from learn to read to learn." And in a way, I was trying to modify those for interpreting, because yes, it is true that we want to have as many words as possible in both the languages, but knowing only the word does not tell the whole story. And that's where you make that step. Going to, an advice for someone considering a career in interpreting, I would say, do not ever think that you said it the perfect way, because a suggestion may come from someone that can have you open your eyes on better ways. And then that's when things can click. I've had many, many clicks in my life. I still have them, and I hope to have them, because one, it means that my brain is awake. Two, it means that I still have to learn. And three, it means that thank God that there is someone out there that knows better than me and I can still learn. So
For sure. I know that, you know, I literally think the same about the Hello's interpreter team, and like interpreters such as you, Miss Giovanna. I think the same. I'm like, thank goodness that they are here to guide us. Izzy, do you have any thoughts on this question before we move on? Thank you guys so much for sharing that. That is very real and like raw stuff that we should be thinking about, especially self-assessment.
So true, Jesse. I can only echo what you guys have already said. I think you both said it perfectly, Giovanni and Sean, especially with the language level. I also think that both extremes are true, where some people underestimate their skills and they procrastinate entering the field. And then for that demographic, I would say, like, have the confidence, have no fear, give it a go. Because as you said, Giovanna, like, we do need more blood in the industry. I loved when you said that. So part of that is also kind of encouraging that side too. I think both are true. Both extremes exist in our industry, which is very interesting.
yeah. And one last thing that I would say, you know, like in any profession, you see two big traits for me as when it comes to professional identity is one, the pride that you take in what you do. And you pride yourself to do a good job when you know that you have undertaken training, studying, learning, cross-reference experiences, going through trials and errors, etc. And then second is confidence in the learning. You know, I have met many interpreters that say, I don't need to go to that training. And I'm thinking, okay, I still go to these trainings because, truth to be told, Sean is teaching something. I want to know what Sean says about that, because he may have found the right key to say something that I have not found yet. Or maybe Sean is the one that is going to start making me think of things that I have not thought of as of yet. So yeah, I think that these questions can last the full 2 hours.
Yes, that's a great question for sure. Thank you guys so much for that. That was an amazing starter question. We're all warmed up and fired up. We're good. We're good to go. And then really quick, oh hi from, I don't know how to pronounce that, Atlanta. So hey, I was reading our chat, just trying to interact with our viewers. If you guys want to drop anything in the chat, feel free to. We can answer questions, on the fly. We did collect some of these questions from like our socials and things like that. So, feel free anytime to on the Hello's Interpreters page on our community forums. If you guys ever just want to interact with us there or drop any questions that you have. It doesn't have to be for an AMA. So yeah, feel free to do that too. Moving on to the next question. This one is a little open-ended. It is, how much should our identity matter as interpreters? So I really want to hear what you guys think about this. This is a deep question.
Wow. There is no way that you can take pride in anything you do if that is not part of your identity. And I think I talk for myself, but I also see that that is reflected in all the people that I work with and I admire and I learn from. So, to make myself clear, I wasn't born knowing everything. And I really stand on the shoulders of so many that have helped me build the knowledge that I have today, the work that I do, that they still tell me, make suggestions, or give me accolades, or also call me on something that I should not be doing or I should be improving on, right? As an interpreter, our identity is actually everything. Why I say that? Because every time I turn around, there is always these either very spoken or underlined thought of, I like what I do, I love what I do, but people don't acknowledge me enough. And I would say, how can people acknowledge us as professionals? And how can people acknowledge the work that we do if we do not project that identity that make them feel that we make a difference in the room? Ladies and gentlemen, if we were not there, people could not talk to each other. So when someone says, well, I'm not saying anything because I'm just the interpreter, the word just already projects that lack of value that you give to the work that you do. Because it's all about perceptions. And if we are the masters at languages, then we also need to anticipate how people are going to hear us. When I say, well, I'm just the interpreter, do you perceive me as someone that is confident in the role that I have? Or you perceive me as someone that has limitations? So I can say everything in a different way without sending that message of being less or being only one thing. So I did not make any comment because it was not in my role to do so. That's about the provider and that's about the patient, etc., etc. But every time we send signals that dilute the power of our work, plays against ourselves, and contribute to magnify a perception of either invisibility or not necessity or not enough. Example, if a Romanian patient has to meet with a nurse that doesn't speak Romanian, there is nothing that is going to be shared if a Romanian interpreter is not there. How many times you have received a call where that was an afterthought? Oh, this patient speaks something else that I don't understand. Oh, can you check if someone in radiology or someone in OBG speaks their language, right? Yet, just remember, a technician that works with x-rays will never tell you what their diagnosis or what the x-ray says, because he knows what their work is, where it stops and when someone else's job starts. So there is an acknowledgement of roles, and we need to be empowered by the work that we do. So identity is something that is very, very dear on my heart, because remember this: if you do not define yourself, others will. If you do not define yourself, others will. And by that token, we will never step up to the point where we can be considered as any other professional in the room. I can go again on and on and on.
I want to tack on there. I agree. If you don't, I mean, what's the saying in English? To get respect, you have to give respect. If we want to have respect as a profession, as an interpreter in our role, then we have to respect it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can convey that if you don't respect your profession.
Yeah.
You know, that self-esteem is a big issue. Like you mentioned healthcare. A couple hundred years ago, doctors were considered less than. They were considered like a step up from, a mortician. They had a terrible identity problem. And so they worked hard as a profession to change it to where now we revere doctors in our society. Like we respect them and we're impressed by them. But they had, in the beginning, their roles were kind of, it was kind of viewed as an add-on or a necessary evil. It wasn't viewed as something to be respected. And they took time to really raise their profession and their identity as physicians. And I think that's a lesson we could take as interpreters and translators as well.
Mm-hmm.
I understood this question completely different than as you two did. In fact, I was confused when we started answering this question, because what I thought was, how much should our personal identity, I can't pronounce that word, identity, matter in our job? In other words, how much does it matter that I'm a female interpreter? How much does it matter that I'm Hispanic? Like, if we're truly neutral, that's how I interpreted the question. Does it matter if we're interpreting? Yeah, so that's how I took it.
That's actually an extremely sophisticated way to look at it, and I would like to honor what you said for a second, if you allow me.
Sure, go ahead.
So no matter what professional venue you walk in, you bring yourself. All of us, we bring who we are, where we come from, how we were raised, what we like, what we don't like, what we agree, what we don't agree, what we hope, our ideologies, etc. So the difference between a personal identity and a professional identity sits in the professional context that you walk in. So when do I step into my interpreter's identity? Is when I show up for work. Not to say that Giovanna changes, but let's say, for example, that, and I come to what you have said about neutrality, right? How many times do you engage in conversation with people and you really would like to tell them what you think? You're just there and say, seriously? Well, I can't as an interpreter, because my professional role is not to speak my mind, but is to be faithful to the message of that person, whether I agree or not. So I like to use the word impartiality rather than neutrality, because as a human being, we will never be able to be neutral, because we have feelings, we have emotions. So it's not like we don't feel anything. It's that we need to learn to manage our feelings so that they don't get in the way of reflecting the message. But that's when you learn the professional ethics. There are things that Giovanna can do because and we talk about communicative autonomy. I decide how to express myself, how to talk to people, to say what I want to say. I want to speak my mind. I don't. I want to be nice. I want to be courteous. I want to just be, flat out saying what goes through my mind. But the moment I step into my interpreter role, then I have ethics there. And why all these boundaries are set for us? Because consistency is one of the big traits of a profession. Think of attorneys. They are defending an individual even though they know that they committed a crime. They're going to try to do what they can because what they agreed upon is to defend them, not to prosecute them. And they are bound by confidentiality. Their client can tell them whatever they want, and that attorney will never be able to share that until death separates them. Okay? Well, confidentiality is a big thing for us too. Impartiality is a big thing for us too. So if each one of us didn't have the professional identity that creates the professional consistency versus what each one of us as an individual may come to decide, then it will be no man's land. And that's why we try to promote so much preparation for an interpreter, because truth to be said, nobody becomes doctor the next day just because I put a Band-Aid on my son's scratch and I still have two hands, but I cannot play piano. But everybody speaking two languages has had one point in their life the thought that they can interpret. And that's not the case. So I spend a lot of time working across professional identity with personal identity. So I do appreciate it that you took the question in that way. I really do.
Thank you. I try. Sean, what do you think?
I think it's interesting because in sign language, I can see how this question comes up more in the personal identity side, because 80% of interpreters are white females. And most interpreters in sign language are not heritage users. They're not like me, someone who grew up with the language in the household. And whereas if in spoken languages, the majority of interpreters, it's the inverse. It's most of the people that are interpreters are usually someone who spoke it in their household growing up, right? They're usually first generation, second generation immigrants, right? They are somebody who has that culture imbued in them and has that language. And so I think when it comes to the deaf community, identity wasn't as much as an issue until recently. And I think that just kind of lines up with how things have become more political and more polarizing. And so identity plays a bigger part. But I like to think that if you are a professional, you should be careful in what jobs you accept, especially if you're a freelancer, in the sense of, we've had some controversial cases in the last couple of years about that particular topic. But if I was offered a job to interpret for something like a political rally or maybe LGBTQIA plus event, maybe I would not be the right person to interpret for that. Not because I wouldn't do my utmost ability to interpret for that community, to support that community, but maybe I'm not the right person because I am not part of that community. So there are going to be some nuances that I'm going to miss out on just because I'm not in that community. I identify differently. So I could see how that weighs in. But if I was the only one there and they are like, just go ahead and do it, we know it's okay, I would want to do my best to make sure I'm aware of all those idiosyncratic stuff that are in, those old little cultural nuances, because I would want to honor that message the best I can. And I think that lends itself to what Giovanna was saying about being a professional, having that as your identity. I'm a professional first, and then I'm a person second.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm being paid to do. I'm sacrificing my personal beliefs, my whatever I may feel or think, to support this particular work. And I can't remember who said this, but but interpreting is our gift to society, and we have to value that as much as society needs it.
And you talk about cultures and the deaf culture, who grew up in one way, who grew up in another way. But think about it. If you take a language like Spanish, but it's not only Spanish, it can be Swahili, it can be French, Italian. Think of one language that is spoken in different countries or in different regions of some countries, right? That is called still the same. It's Italian, it's French, but it does have differences, right? And so often it's not possible to have a Spanish interpreter from Colombia or from Bolivia or from Venezuela or Argentina, right? And so this is also why in the in the training, in the formation of interpreters, we talk about strategies. So we need to learn the appropriate strategies to face some of the barriers to communication. And the barrier can be linguistic, something that we say in Argentina, but in Venezuela either doesn't mean anything or means something different, right? And does that make sense with the context? How do we clarify that? So in learning the strategies to get through barriers to communication is also another reason why just having the gift of the languages is not enough. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you guys for sharing that. Wow. I loved how this question, but I purposely made this question really open-ended just to see what kind of, if it had to do with actual interpreting or like how we view our profession. So I'm glad that we had both perspectives and we were actually able to link those. That was cool. Giovanna, I really like how you said if we don't define ourselves, other people will. Mm-hmm. And that just really stuck with me as like a new interpreter too, like, whoa. I think that's really important for people going into this profession. I guess people that are new like me, like thinking about our profession and how we hold ourselves, to that standard, but also like how we should view ourselves as mm-hmm. well. That's really important. So do you guys have anything else that you'd like to add to this question before we move on?
One thing, because I always have something to add, is this is also the reason why we need more interpreters to know the history of the profession. And by history, I don't mean when it was born hundreds of years ago. I mean the policies, the laws, the ins and outs, because we need more hands on deck in the associations to build a vocal, robust response to everything that out there is done, and then it feels that we have to fit the mold. We don't. They don't know it. I rest my case.
Thank you. That was a great wrap up for that question. That rocked. I'm having so much fun right now. Okay, so the next one, we're going to go into like a more technicality of like, I guess, what would you do situation. So this was a question that someone submitted, and it was, has anyone ever refused payment for an assignment? And if so, what did you do about it?
Who wants to start first? Do
I like,
to-
oh, you guys went.
I am the MA, right? Okay, so Kizzy, I don't know if you have a different perspective, but I can have several perspectives here. So I'm trying to see what is the point that this comes from. As anyone, anyone ever refused to pay for an assignment? And what would you do as an interpreter? Or the other way that I can read it is, has any one interpreter ever refused to receive an assignment for an interpreter? And what do you do if you were the one that had to pay this assignment?
Oh, okay. I understand. I think the question was more geared, you complete an assignment, like you agreed, both parties agreed that you would be the interpreter for the assignment, and then you completed it, and then they say, no, we're not going to pay you. If that never happened, then what would you do?
Okay. So I am going to put several hats on. For those that don't know me, I have had probably, if not all, many of the hats that you can have in this career. So I wear the hat of the interpreter, first of all. So if I do a job and someone refuses to pay me, I would question, first of all, why? Did I suck at it? Did someone complain about it? Or is just because you are a bad client? And mind you, the word client has several definitions. If I am a freelance interpreter, who is my client? Let's say that Sean calls me, Giovanna, to interpret at one of his personal meetings. He's going to court and he needs me to be his interpreter. So Sean is my direct client. But Sean may also be the owner of a language service company. And so the company contracts my services, I do the job, and then either Sean the individual or Sean the company don't want to pay me. So there is always a why. But before I also ask the why, I need to ask myself, what did I do to cause this? And it's not imposter syndrome, guys. It's not. It's called accountability. So did I arrive late and the client complained? Sean, as a company, needs to save their reputation with their client. You need to save your reputation with Sean because Sean is your client and Sean is giving you work. He's giving me work, right? So I assess all these factors. So I see, did I do anything that may have triggered this situation? And so that is a conversation with my client, whatever definition that client may have. Is that something that I caused? How much, if this is something that I caused, how much am I willing to understand and come to an agreement so that I save my reputation, but I also help save the reputation of the client that is giving me work? 2, if it's a straight up a company that does not pay, don't whine, walk away. Start your legal action, start your conversations professionally, because believe me, there are a lot of clients that I would like to fire in a very straight up face, but you never know what can happen tomorrow. So professionalism is what shapes you in the difficulties as well. Am I perfect on that? Wish to be? Not yet there yet. But you strive for it, right? If it is a company that is bad in paying, do your research. Maybe that payment fell through the cracks. Maybe they didn't receive your invoice. Maybe the payment did not go through. Maybe they simply forget. You establish your relationship with that client based on the type of conversation you have. To recap, if I am an interpreter and someone refuses me to pay, is because they are a bad client, then move on, fire them. Do I have to suck it up? No, I will still try to get my payment, but at least I know that I'm not gonna waste time for them anymore. 2, did I do anything to cause that? Remember that if you served on an assignment where someone else is responsible for it, I am creating problem for the person that has that client. And so how much are you willing to negotiate and to be accountable for? Now, and if I am the interpreter that someone else refuses to pay. Now, what is the other perspective that I said is, so if I lost myself in this.
Oh, like if the interpreter refused to receive payment.
And I have that too. So I would say that my most beautiful experience. A client, so I am now having my hat of a language service provider, and we received a complaint regarding an interpreter that definition was very bad. Well, I never take the very bad. Oh, really? Oh my God, tell me more. No. Oh my God, I should have known better. No. I take the comment and say, let me investigate. Because there is always two sides to a story. And because I was not there, I do not know what happened. Then I called the interpreter, and the interpreter did say, I am so sorry. I froze. I couldn't say a word. I felt I sounded really choppy. I am really thankful for the strong interpreter that was partnering with me, because my colleague took it on and ran with it. And so we were talking about, okay, but what are we going to do to avoid that you find yourself next time? Because obviously the interpreter accepted a job that was well beyond the interpreter's competences and skills. This is where it's really nice when you acknowledge that you were not ready for it, and now there is the learning curve. But the interpreter at the end said, I do not know what you're going to do with your client, but please know that you will not receive an invoice from me. It's my fault. It's the only way that I have to be accountable to you, and I apologize because I should have called you first. And in my career, I have had a couple of these situations that were either related to low performance or delays. An interpreter got there very late, and that caused a lot of other implications on the part of both the provider and the service user. And I must say that I do appreciate accountability. I do. I appreciate accountability when people show it to me. I think that people appreciate accountability when I show it to them, instead of getting into a, pride type of arguments where, oh my God, well, they were not ready when I arrived. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. You are there to do a job. We are there to do a job. And we are there because people have a problem. They cannot talk to each other. So if we add to the problem, it's not going to be good. So I think I gave both perspectives. I hope I covered all angles. That's my take. If you have a different take, write in the chat.
I don't have anything to add to that, really. I think I agree wholeheartedly with you on both those points. Yeah.
There is also another thing to say. Freelancers, don't forget that in order to be paid by law, you have to produce an invoice. And in order to be paid, you have to produce an invoice that is correct and complete. And if you do not know enough about AB5, the difference between employees and freelancers, and what are the obligations before the rights of being a freelance and independent contractor, that's also part of your identity.
Oh, that's a whole other topic.
That's all. Yeah.
I mean, I often when I present on HIPAA for interpreters and I kind of go into some of the legalities of it, it often kind of turns into the business aspect where interpreters don't realize that, oh, I'm supposed to be carrying professional liability. Oh, I'm supposed to be doing this and doing this and doing this. And I'm like, yes, why do you think you get paid so much?
Mhm.
I was like, and why do you think when you become an employee, the pay drops? I was like, what do you think the employer's doing with that money? They're
Mhm.
paying for all the stuff that you would have been paying for yourself as a freelancer, or at least you should be paying for. So it's just in the eyes of the law, you're considered your own business.
But think about it. When you buy a house, do you buy that house at cost? You don't. Because it's not only the cost of the material, it's the cost of the people that worked on it, it's the cost of the mortgage company that prepares all the stuff, So the difference between what we call the revenue, right, is actually going to cover other expenses. It does not go straight into some pockets. So
That's a good point, because when I was working for a healthcare system and I would try to hire people, especially sign language interpreters, because we're used to a higher amount as freelancers. So when they look at a job, they kind of they feel a little insulted at the rate that's offered to them. And I was like, no, let's sit down and do the math and really examine what you're actually getting per hour. So this is how much this is valued at. This is how much this is valued at. This. So oftentimes, depending on the job, if you are a W-2 employee as an interpreter, you end up doing better because a lot of that cost you would have been paying out yourself, such as retirement, taxes, and things like that. A lot of it's amortized through the business because they get cheaper insurance rates, they get cheaper, etc., because of group purchasing and things like that. So
when it comes to W-2, now we're going into another conversation, but I think it's important that interpreters understand that the difference between working as a freelancer, aka independent contractor, and being employed. And yeah, people can say yes, but when you try to peel the onion, there are a lot of questions that they don't know how to answer when I ask the questions, right? And so in a salary, which is what constitutes also one of the elements of being an employee, therefore receiving the W-2 at the end of the year, your total compensation includes benefits. So it's not only the value of that dollar, is how much you get paid for also the vacation, for example, right? So all these, the insurances that you're covered with. So that's called the total compensation. Now, how much do you really know about your obligations as a freelance, as an independent contractor? I always suggest that interpreters, any freelancer, takes 101 classes at the Small Business Administration offices. That's a very impartial way for you to learn, instead of such and such told me, this company told me, and this other told me, etc. Because truth to be told, each one of us has to be responsible for their own legal employment status. And it should be the freedom of the person to decide whether they want to work as a freelance, and so they know where their rights and obligations stand, or they want to be an employee, and at that point, where the rights and the obligations starts and end. Again, another AMA only on that.
Yeah, there could be one just devoted on the business aspect. But I agree. I encourage interpreters and translators to there's a bunch of free classes that is offered by nonprofits and by the government on just how to run a small business. And you could literally just Google, small business administration.
Mhm.
And there's tons of courses online that you could take to help you. It teaches you everything from invoicing to paying taxes and all that stuff. It's really great stuff. And it's provided from the government.
Yep.
Good to know. Wow. I'm going to look that up right after this AMA. Izzy, do you have anything to add to that? I'd love to hear your perspective. If you have any, like, story or something about it.
No. I mean, I've never had an agency, and I get paid by agencies. I don't direct contract often with just the deaf client, which is where that situation I think might arise more. Like my agencies, luckily, love them, are quite ethical, and they pay me. The worst case that I've ever had was that they paid me the next year, like not just December and then I got paid in January. Like I did the job in January and I got paid that December. And then I stopped working with that agency. Other than that, no, good experiences, luckily. And I also will be looking up those small business administration classes for sure. That's it.
Wow. Okay. Wow. The next year, that's crazy. I would have forgotten all about it. Great.
I forgot about it.
Thank
Yeah.
you guys for that. And I think you guys just sparked a new idea. I think maybe either next month or the month after, we should have like a business AMA where it's like all geared towards like the technicalities of, kind of like a past webinar we did, like the build your own brand. But, maybe we do something like that in the future again. So that would be cool. Okay. Are we ready to go on to our next question? Woohoo! Okay. The next one this one's kind of fun, is what is your biggest pet peeve that you have in the industry?
I want to see Izzy's because I see Izzy's like already like there.
Go ahead.
I'll
I'll let you go first.
Okay, I'll keep it short, but it's so dumb. I hate when other American Sign Language interpreters silently say the signs that they're signing like a deaf person does. Oh my God, Sean, I know. That drives me insane. I would go as far as to not team with that person because I can't take it. That's my pet peeve.
I would say similarly instead. Well, similarly instead is not good. They don't go together. My pet peeve is when an interpreter cannot eloquently or professionally talk about their own profession. And it usually gets into whining or into, no, I did this because I think. And I'm like, can you justify your I think into any of our ethics, any of our standards, any of our policies, the strategies? So my pet peeve is when interpreters cannot justify their choices in the foundations of the profession. That's where I start peeling the onion and say, is this interpreting or is being a bilingual? Because interpreting is a profession, being a bilingual is not. So we're all, and that's why I said, that goes back, my personal identity is to be a bilingual, a trilingual. Can I really interpret? No, I need to undertake several other steps to make that transformation. And that's my biggest pet peeve.
I'm not gonna lie, Izzy's got me like all flustered now like with that one. I'm like, oh my gosh, I do hate that too. Especially when it's remote, because then they have their mic on and you can hear it and it's like breathing into you and it's like, stop. It's a little extra. That's a really good one. I didn't think of that.
No, but now I'm thinking more existentially on, okay, but neutrally, impartially, how does that ethically matter in our field? Like, it bothers us for obvious reasons, but now I'm like, do I have an ethical reason as to why that's my pet peeve? And I'm trying to think if I do. Other than that, of course, it's annoying. But technically, if they're interpreting the message, the deaf client can't hear anything, right? And then the hearing client, they might be annoyed too. I'm not sure. Maybe with that realm, like respect for the clients, if we're referring to the Code of Professional Conduct. I can't pronounce words today. Code of Professional Conduct, then it would be disruptive for the hearing person's experience, right? Therefore, that's how ethically maybe it breaks it, but I can't give a better answer than that off the fly.
Do you think there is also the risk that when you do that, the hearing person may say, oh no, I didn't say that?
Oh yeah, right. Because you might be using a word that you glossed for that particular word in that language. You know, it doesn't mean what they like. It's like, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm sorry.
And glossing, it doesn't happen in spoken languages.
I'm sure it does.
We don't have that as one of our modes or our. So the concept may, but we don't have that as a mode.
You would never know if it's a spoken language translation situation.
But to me, it would be like, what if now, someone else in the room hears what the interpreter is whispering in a way, right? Because that's what you're talking about, the whisper with the sign. I am translating into my own world, and say, that's not the same thing that I said. It opens an entire different can of worms, because now the attention is no longer on who they are interacting with, it's on the interpreter. Interesting.
So for pet peeve, I think for me, it goes more to the lack of humility an interpreter will have. So going into an interpreting assignment, like, I think there's a difference between pride and arrogance. Yeah. Like, I take pride in what I do, and I do consider myself one of the best interpreters out there for American Sign Language and English. And so I walk into a room feeling very confident, and I feel like I can out interpret anybody in this room. And I do feel that way genuinely. But that just comes from years of training and experience and work. And when I come across somebody who wants to instantly flout their degrees and their experience and whatever in front of me, it aggravates me so much, because I think of that phrase of, what is it in English? I forget. Like, it's the one who talks the most is the fool.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, but no, I think it's the opposite. It's more like the one who speaks the least is the most intelligent one, or at least appears the most intelligent, right? And I feel like people have such self-esteem issues that they're so anxious to flout their credibility to another interpreter. It just aggravates me, because I'm like, I could care less. Like, I couldn't care less about your credentials or whatever. I just am more concerned about, can you do this job with me or not? Can you hang with me? maybe on a smaller level, I think that lends itself to Adrian published an article recently about teaming wins and woes, and I think that was in there a little bit about your teamer being an issue. But I think another one that I have an issue with is when your team does not want to stick with or who is too into the per minute switching. I come from the old school where you interpret for a speaker. So if a speaker's going 45 minutes, I'm going 45 minutes because they're the speaker and I'm the speaker, because I'm personifying that person, right? I am essentially that person in this language. And I find it so annoying when an interpreter wants to be like, oh, it's already been half an hour, it's overtime. And I'm like, I just shoot them back. I was like, no, I'm interpreting. Like, I'll give you the look when I'm ready to, if I am really that tired to switch out, because that guy is still talking. I'm going to keep talking. You know, I can hang with this guy. Because, you know, when the speaker goes long, sometimes it adds up. So when the interpreters, so it's sign language because of logistics, you have to like physically switch each other out. It's more intrusive and annoying for me. So I'm very I get, that's a pet peeve of mine, is someone who's a little too specific or too anal retentive about the switch times. I was like, let's go with the flow. I'm very much more about let's go with what's right in the moment, not what's right for you, because you're serving a client.
On the other side, that client, I was doing some shadowing exercises this morning because I try to still keep up with my interpreting skills, right? Because I don't want to get that rusty. And the speaker that I was shadowing was, oh boy, fast, really fast. You're talking about teamwork, right? And you see, in sign language, you all team tag more than us. In other words, they would hire only one Amharic interpreter to go 5 hours, 4 hours, you know. But boy, if the sign language interpreter says that after an hour they want a pair or even 45 minutes, then pair B. Doesn't happen all the time, I recognize this, but generally there is a much more either understanding or bending to sign language requirements than spoken language requirements. But to me, the teamwork is about understanding the purpose without sacrificing the outcome. So if for me that speaker is going that fast that I do need, even after 15 minutes, for you to come in and help me, that has to be a teamwork. You know, the other interpreter that is not interpreting is not like they're reading a book while I get until minute 29. It's partnership. It's, you know, supporting with a term, a sign. I saw I was at the Natural Hazards Conference, and the two sign language interpreters that were there, I was in awe of how they team tagged, because obviously I had the eye, right? I want to really check how they do this, because for me it's always amazing when a sign language interpreter is on. But I was able to understand when one was missing something and the other one was going right, so with a suggestion. And that's what teamwork is. So I agree with what you say. If I can go on and the moment cannot be interrupted, think of a climax of a speaker, right? And you come in with a completely different voice at that point. If that doesn't sound natural, can really break the intensity of the moment. But on the other side, it can be that after 5, 10, 15 minutes, you need help. And at that point, you also have to be ready enough to create the space for the other one to get in. But these things also are based on strategies. First of all, another pet peeve. Oh my God, now we're going to say them all. is when you have two interpreters that have to team tag and they have never talked before they show up. If I have a partner and I am going to interpret with that partner, I want to meet the day before. I want to talk about what do you do when if, what do you do when if, because I don't want to, I have a hard time to make a fool out of myself in front of everybody, and I have even a harder time for someone else to make me look like a fool. And so for me, the teamwork is about understanding how we're going to work together, is to really create the harmony, because everybody has their own thing. Maybe the signals can be different. Hey, when I do this, and now that we also do remote, the remote world is completely different. At least when you are side by side, you and I can just have an understanding. You know, I'm speaking, so you now don't see my hands. So we can come up with some sort of signaling. I'm talking about spoken language interpreters. But on remote, you must have some strategies that are set up before. Are we connecting with an extra phone? Are we connecting with a different line? What is the cue that I can give you for you to come in? What if I need help, I am going to tell you this. I'm going to, by the private chat, be ready for that. But these is all things that can go really wrong if you are with the wrong partner. I remember one time, my partner fell asleep while they were interpreting. You know, when you are driving and you have that millisecond that you're like this, and that's what happened. My colleague was extremely tired. It was a long trial, and I took over in a millisecond. My colleague realized what was going on, and we had it flow to perfection. But you cannot do it if you do not know how to observe, how to be there for your partner. Because this is what team tag is. You are there not only for you, you're there for the other. That's why you work in team. Otherwise, it would be called the two solo coming together.
I love that. I agree. So, well, it's very interesting because, like, I feel like that used to be the way for sign language interpreters, but I feel like that's really it's regressed in that area, because what I have to tell interpreters is you're paid that much per hour because you're expected to prep for it. You know, that's another thing too, is I hate that we focus so much on the hour thing. I'm very much like a project person. So if I'm asked to interpret a conference, I'll take a look at the conference really quick and I'll be like, okay, this is my rate per day. That includes the travel, that includes prep time, everything. And I just give it for the day. And they're like, oh, give it to me by the hour. I was like, no. I was like, this is my day rate. If it goes long, it goes long, and you won't be charged more. This is my whole day rate because I'm expected to be there the whole day essentially. And you're getting what you pay for. And I wish we would kind of get away from the hourly model as interpreters and do it more like other industries, like plumbers and electricians as an example, where it's like a call out fee. You know, clients don't like it. Clients.
No. But I'm sure that you're going to agree with what I say, because you also have had the different roles, right, in your life. And the point is that there is a time and a place for everything, and that's where the savviness of the business comes in. Okay? So if I am going to interpret the entire day for a COVID clinic, Giovanna, am I going to talk about it per hour or am I going to talk about per day? Right? That's one thing. Second thing is, unfortunately, sometimes this is possible and sometimes this is not, because there are contracts. And that's why I say, if you do not define yourself, others will define us. Right? We are looked at as a commodity, right? Where we are paid by the minute, we are paid by the hour. And the surgeon that goes into that surgery room for a open heart surgery does not make the same salary that the nurse makes. Well, we interpreters make the same money. You working as an over-the-phone interpreter, whether you are interpreting for that accident on the road or that open heart surgery, your rate remains the same, right? So sometimes we are unfortunately constrained by the rules and requirements that have been set us for that, right? And I, Giovanna, as a freelance, need to work with that. I have clients where I can have a variety of options, and there are clients that really say, this is how my model is, you take it or leave it. And unfortunately, in a good economy, we need both. Okay? There are interpreters that are paid for a full time for just 15 minutes encounter, but you're paying your minimum regardless. And another of my pet peeves is that, oh boy, when they go 2 hours and 1 minute, I need to be paid for the extra 15, for the extra half hour for that 1 minute. And I'm like, it's not me, because to me is sometimes I lose and sometimes I gain, right? So I think that the good business person and the interpreter, the freelance interpreter, must be a good business person. We also need to acknowledge the different type of clientele that we have. There is one contract that is like this, and another contract that is like that, and another contract that is like that. This is why you have, as a freelancer, a variety, and you have the freedom to accept or deny what has been offered to you. Please, interpreters, I'm not telling you that if you accept an hour where you get paid at $10 and then another one comes in where they offer you 100, you drop the one for 10, because that's not this is lack of integrity. Just remember that.
Wow.
Oh, I think we might have lost Jesse.
Oh, are we good?
Oh, okay. There you go. You're back. I'm sorry.
Coming back.
Oh no, sorry. But I really like the direction that this question turned. I think there's so much to unpack in this question. So I appreciate all of you guys' perspectives.
And would you know that we would have all these pet peeves?
Well, I, even as a new interpreter, like from a student learning perspective and then being fresh into the field, I have like two that I can think of, if you guys don't mind, that I share really quick. Like one that I have, and it was whenever I was first learning. when I was first learning was, you know, I am a big person in feedback. Like I love feedback, and you know, I know that I'm going to make mistakes. Like that's a given. I mean, how else are you going to learn if you don't make mistakes? You know, one doesn't come without the other. And so, I'm sorry, I don't know what that noise is. Can you guys hear that? Sorry. Anyway, where was I? The mistakes. Yeah. So someone, you know, I would have a partner, or you know, a professor would watch, not a professor, students, like, you know, we would watch each other's work and do this stuff, you know, and work with each other, because that's a big part, you know, the part of the curriculum was they wanted us to, you know, to be accustomed, like working with each other and getting used to that and having our work evaluated, because, you know, a lot of people get sensitive about their work. Not me. I want everything that you saw. I want a list. I want examples. I want timestamps. You know, if you get the timestamps, I want the timestamps. And so, you know, sometimes the people would be like, I'm like, oh, well, like, how was it? Like, what's your feedback? And they're like, it was good. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like, okay, thank you. But like, what was good about it? Or, oh, you know, this could need work. This wasn't so good. okay, thank you for noting that, but like what wasn't so good? What about it? What did you see? What choice did I make? And then what choice could I have made better? You know, kind of like reframing it like that. I think that is one of my pet peeves is, okay, you know, subjective words aren't super helpful, but observations are very, very helpful. So that's
But
one of my pet peeves.
that goes like exactly along the line when I said, if we, the masters of languages, cannot express the meaning, then I have a hard time believing that we can be good interpreters. Sorry. So I have a rule in my trainings that you cannot use one word um, responses. Oh, it's good. How did you feel about? Oh, good. Oh, bad. Can you elaborate in about 35 words? Because think about it. If you cannot even control your own way to express your thoughts, how can you manipulate words? It's not manipulate is not the right term. How can you work with words to express the thought of another?
Right. That is so real. That really is. The whole feedback and how we frame feedback, I think, is really important. Not to, you know, like spare anyone's feelings. No, I think, you know, we should not be afraid. I think all of us should have that transparency and we should all be very transparent about our work. I mean, that can even be tied into, I mean, the code of professional conduct. I mean, we should always be transparent and, oh, well, the point of my profession is to, you know, be the, you know, the best that I can to serve the people that, you know, I want to serve. And so you should want to be transparent about your work and accept the feedback. And I just think that's really important. So that is something that is one of my pet peeves. And then I would say another one, as like a newer interpreter, I have met plenty of like wonderful professionals in this field, such as you guys, that I really look up to. You know, every now and then, I don't know what it is. You know, I think what Sean said earlier about pride and arrogance and how they're really different. You know, there's definitely a different vibe to both of those. I have met some interpreters. I don't know what it is, but they're not nice to newer interpreters. I don't know why that is. There's some that are just really nasty to new interpreters, and I can't figure out why, especially since I'm so big on learning from people like in professionals such as you guys. I think that is the main way to learn is from the community that you're serving, and then also from the interpreters that have been doing this for said plus years. I mean, I think that is, those two are like the most important things to consider when you're learning as a newer interpreter. And so when you meet someone that just, you know, it's no one's job and responsibility to necessarily teach you. Of course, you know, I don't think that, but to just be kind, just to be kind to, you know, the young blood that's coming in that, you know, is one day going to be working with you and going to be your colleague. Maybe, you know, maybe not right away when I'm a student, but now, you know, I could be working with them or teaming with them. And so I just think it's important to just be nice to everyone, but, you know, especially like newer interpreters. We learn from observing, and I don't know, I think that's really important. That's one of my pet peeves.
I think that's very valid, and I think part of it is a lot of interpreters don't know how to give feedback. For one, that's a big issue, and I'm sure Giovanna can attest to this. Like whenever you do interpreter trainings, you almost have to teach them and model for them what feedback looks like. Correct. Constantly. Correct. And you're almost doing it throughout the entire course. And because you have to teach them to learn how to monitor their product while they're interpreting, but you also have to teach them how to monitor someone else's product and where to give feedback and how to make it effective. I will say most interpreters like I'm to the point where I just assume someone's going to ask me something, so I'm prepared to give an answer on feedback. And if they don't, then that's fine. I'm not going to give feedback, because I have found if I give feedback to somebody who didn't ask for it, they'll never take it and they instantly are defensive. And so I have just avoided that. If you truly want feedback from somebody, I would suggest you prime them and say, hey, during this session, I've been trying to focus on this part of my interpretation. Maybe it's decollage or something. And I'm like, I've been focusing on that. Can you kind of keep an eye on that? And after the appointment, can we debrief about that? Now you've primed that other interpreter to be like, okay, I'm watching and I'm monitoring for this particular thing. And now I'm ready to give you feedback. That actually might be more effective. But as far as like interpreters and eating our young kind of a thing, I talk about that a lot. I personally feel it's a self-esteem issue. There's a jealousy issue.
Fear.
They're scared that you're going to take their work. They would rather push you down to make themselves feel better.
So a couple of comments. First of all, seasoned interpreter, you have a huge opportunity to leave a legacy with the newer interpreters. And an interpreter will never forget the one that they learned from. 2, a newer interpreter that is a professional interpreter will recognize whether they need to refer to someone else that is more experienced or partner with an interpreter that is more experienced. So it could be source of referrals. I'm Italian, and one of my traits is to always say things at the face value, which has pros and cons. But I remember that during the writing of one of the textbooks that I co-authored, one of our fellow authors told me and told us, can we please change the narrative and don't tell the interpreter what not to do. Tell rather what to do. So what is the big lesson that I learned? And again, I am still on my journey to apply that as much as possible, trying to get better at it every day. But like you said before, instead of saying, oh, I don't know, oh, you did that wrong. Can we talk about how we can improve that? And it's not about sugarcoating. It's about find the right way not to come across judgmental and not to come across as I'm better than you. And I'm actually telling you that you basically sucked at what you did. Sometimes it's not what the person has the intention to do, but often is the way it's perceived. And so if you tell me no to something that I need, what am I going to do? I'm not going to hang out with you because you're shutting me down on something that I need, right? So try to be really building the community. It doesn't matter how many years of experience you have. You may have suffered for all the years that we have interpreted. Okay? So experience does not characterize performance. But at the same time, competence is shown in different ways. Okay, I think we can move on from the pet peeves because otherwise we're going to talk too much about this. Because there are so many things. I love this profession. I can tell you that I consider myself a blessed person because I do exactly what I like to do. And so it doesn't matter how many times I feel pushed down, there is always something that brings me up, pulls me up. And so let's keep going.
Okay. Thank you guys for sharing and also making, thank you for commenting on my pet peeves as well, because I don't know, I feel like a lot of people too that are, signing up with Hello Interpreters are people that are in an ITP or they're newer interpreters because they want to create these connections and be a part of the community, learn more about it, learn more about people, like them and all this kind of stuff. And because they look up to you guys, they really look up to you guys. I know they do because I look up to you guys. So that's how I know that they do as well. And so I know a lot of people are going to resonate with that because you guys' responses were great. So I think maybe we have time for one more question. And let's do this one. We're going to end it on a feel-good note. Really feel-good note. It is, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of being an interpreter? I know there's so many good ones. It's hard.
I think that for me, the first one is to give people the understanding of what is happening. When you have the look from being lost to understanding. And I think that this is, first of all, what we give the world. And we often think that we are giving that sense of understanding to the person that does not speak English. But it goes both ways. If that doctor wants to make a difference in people's life, they are hungry and thirsty to hear you interpreting what they say, as much as the deaf person, the Spanish speaker, the Amharic, Burmese, Italian, whatever, to hear in their own language what the other says. So for me, this is one of the rewarding aspect. And the second one is to provide answers. We often interpret for situations where people have a need for communication. They have a need to access services. And I think that our jobs provide hope. Because if I need something and I apply for a service, it's always a big question mark whether or not I am going to get that service. But if I don't even have the means to apply for that service, it's guaranteed that I don't get the service. And so for me is giving people the dignity to participate into the society where they live. And I'm gonna go get me emotional a little bit, but it's really the mission that drives our service, because we are a profession of service. We don't sell a product. We don't sell screws or hammers or batteries, or we don't sell a thing. We provide communication. It's a service. And has huge responsibility. People can also lose services because of our misinterpreting. And so, I think of my mother, and we were coming here on the plane at the very beginning, 20 some years ago when I arrived, and we were on the plane, and the hostess goes to my mother and says, "Would you like some water, ma'am?" And my mom says, "No English." "Oh, would you like some water, ma'am?" "No English, no capisco." "Would you like some water, ma'am?" And I hope you do not misunderstand this, but I said, she doesn't speak English. She's not deaf. She kept yelling like if she talked louder, she would understand. And there are so many people in this country that are told off or they are not provided services because they cannot be heard. So that's for me one of the most rewarding aspects. And I do have a fun story of someone that called us and said, "Can I have a Vietnamese interpreter right away?" Or kind of I am driving to my in-laws and I have to ask them to marry their daughter, and I really want to make sure that they understand. And that was the most. And we told them, yes, but only if you call back and let us know what they said. They said,
No. That's so funny that people call for anything.
Mhm.
Anything. Okay. Yeah, I like that answer. I'm going to kind of copy it in a way. The service that we provide is unmatched. It's unfathomable. Like, I didn't realize becoming an interpreter would give me the skill to essentially fall in love with some random stranger in an hour.
Mhm.
Because you get to know everything about them, and you learn, again, tying back to being impartial, you just learn to accept it.
Yeah.
Like, any crime they did, okay. Any people that they've hurt emotionally or physically, like, okay, like that's just what we're rolling with. Or the accomplishments they've done or their background in any language. Like, primarily Sean and I work with deaf people, but for me as well, like Spanish, Portuguese, or whatever company, whatever boss that is giving, John Doe a chance. Like, oh my God, I love you as an employer now. Can I work for you at, whatever warehouse? No. But I would, because now we have this weird, unique relationship with these people that is so quick and so for that moment, but so deep. And that's such a gift. So it's a cool skill. I love that experience every day.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
I think I want to go off of service that was mentioned a lot, and in ancient Greek, it's diakonos, I think, or diakona, konya. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it gives the context of going through dust or going through a person, and the intention is service was not a lowly thing, but a noble thing. It was an honorable thing. Um, and it was expected from every single person. And in ancient Greece, those that were wealthy were expected to serve in different ways and set up institutions to help, while other people with lesser means could still serve in their own way. So everyone has a gift to serve others, and for us, it'll be this. I know another person I talked to before. They pointed out that language is a curse. Humanity at one point spoke one language, and then in the scriptures, in the Bible, it talks about how God confused the languages and made many languages from after the flood of the great flood of Noah, and it's a curse. We're not meant to truly understand one another, and it's very interesting. Like, to a degree, that's somewhat true, but we're almost a mallet, like we're almost a cure for that curse in a way, where we kind of help bridge those communities, those cultures, those languages, those services, those people all together, and we have an opportunity to truly unite people. And I don't think there's a more noble purpose for us, because if communication is everything, communication sets up relationships with your loved ones, with your family members, your significant other, countries, businesses. Everything depends on communication, and it's the one thing that we do is communication. We help bridge that gap.
Wow. Those Amazing. Amazing. Those are just such feel-good answers, and they're so true. I think the most rewarding thing that I've noticed, I feel like, is so I just feel like the world needs more understanding no matter what. Even if people speak the same language, there still needs to be more understanding. But if I'm able to be a sort of bridge to come to that understanding, I feel like that's just, a small way that I can give back in the world. And like Izzy said, open up those opportunities just by being there. We're not just an interpreter, but we can be a connection for other people. And that's something that I just think is really, I don't know, beautiful. It's kind of like the point of life is, to be kind and to help others. And if we can do that through our jobs, then what's better? I can't think of anything better.
Yeah.
Not even to mention learning another language benefits just you as a whole too. I feel like learning ASL, because I'm not a native language user, my critical thinking skills have developed. I can think of more, I can depict things when I close my eyes in my mind easier. I can problem solve a lot better. Oh, what's another way to say this? I feel like I'm better at communicating with other people because now my whole job is about communication. And looking at people's facial expressions now, I feel like I can recognize them easier in my own day-to-day life. I feel like I'm better at understanding people. My job is to understand people, and now I can apply that in my life. And now I'm better at understanding the people in my life. It just there's just no better profession. I feel like, I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, you said it perfectly, Jessie. I do the same thing. I carry these skills from interpreting and I just apply it to all my friends and see what their faces are really telling me or what their words aren't telling me. So maybe that's where my curse is with language. But it's so fun. It is the best job.
I agree.
Yeah.
It really is. Oh my goodness.
And Sean, I want to follow up on one thing when you said, is the curse in the Bible? It comes from the Babel Tower. But if you read Corinthians chapter 1, Corinthians 1, the first letter, and you go to chapters 12, 13, and 14, that tells you, to me, those chapters speak to the biblical mission of the one that spoke, the one that could understand more languages. So in a way, the curse has also been cured. So yeah, but I agree with all here. Interpreting is the best. I mean, translators can say that translation is the best, and that's fine too. We can share. We can share the podium. That's okay.
Right? Yeah, we'll share with them. Oh my goodness.
We have two sides of the same coin. We make that communication happen. Right? I agree.
For sure. It's just an amazing process. I love it. This career it rocks. It's amazing. And I'm so glad that we can have open discussions with these where people, aren't afraid to ask questions, because sometimes people are nowadays, they are a little bit afraid to ask questions. And so as, new interpreter, I'm really grateful for you guys coming out here, being so open with all of us and being transparent and giving your perspective and views, because we all come from different backgrounds. And yeah, do we think that concludes our AMA? What do you think, Sean?
I think so. Take us out.
All right. Thank you to everyone who joined. If if you're still here and you came from start to finish, wow, thank you guys so much. That's pretty awesome. And please feel free to connect with us on our socials. We're going to try to have an AMA every month. And so, save your questions or don't. You can even connect with us in the forums of our and Hello Interpreters. We have the community forums. We post twice a week, and you can always ask your questions there and engage with us. We'll be open. And yeah, so we'll see you for the next one. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for joining us. You came from start to finish, so we really appreciate you. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Izzy. Thank you, Giovanna. We really appreciate you guys all coming here and coming together. And this has been an amazing experience. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all, and have fun interpreting.
Yes, have fun, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.